Welcome to School Britannia, the podcast where two Aussies teach Brits their own history. This is my friend Ellie.
And this is my friend Claire.
And February is LGBT History Month in the UK.
We're going to be sharing stories from the history of the LGBTQI community in the UK all year round, but we thought this was a great chance to do a special dedicated episode.
I have to give a huge shout out to a really cool Instagram account, Ellie.
Yes.
It's called Historical Homos.
Cute.
It's historical.homos on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
They introduced me to the fact that Emperor Hadrian
of our first episode.
Yes, of Hadrian's Wall fame. Super gay.
Really?
Yeah. And I just didn't know because I spent so long researching his wall, I never managed to make it to his Wikipedia page.
Aw, Hadrian.
Yeah, he was this really cool gay figure in history that I didn't know about.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so if you want to hear about some more cool historical figures who were gay, queer, trans, lesbian, go check them out. They have a book as well. Some very explicit content. Instagram does often delete their posts, which is shit. But, Mum, maybe don't look that one up.
Cool. So if you guys have any recommendations of specific things you'd like to hear in the future, please give us an email at schoolbritpodcast@gmail.com or just hit us up on Instagram at schoolbritpodcast. So what will you be teaching us about today, Claire?
I was going to teach you about London Pride March.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Yeah. So some context for the history of Pride March.
Mm-hmm.
So male homosexuality was only decriminalised in the UK in 1967. Yeah, not cool.
Whoa.
But the age of consent for gay and bisexual men was still 21. But for heterosexual people, it was 16. This wasn't changed until 2001.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Gay people weren't allowed to serve in the armed forces, which wasn't changed until the year 2000.
Jesus.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was like the American don't ask, don't tell thing. I'm not sure if they had an explicit policy like that, but yeah, they weren't allowed to openly serve in the armed forces. Mm-hmm. There was no marriage equality, which has been a really big issue in the last kind of decade. Yeah. So civil partnerships were introduced in 2004 and equal marriage was introduced in 2013 in England and Wales and in Scotland a year later. Being gay was still classified as an illness until 1972.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. I'm not sure when they kind of changed that definition, but when I was kind of researching some of... Yeah. So we often think of the Stonewall riots when you think of the beginning of a lot of activism in this community, but there was still a lot of hostility towards gay people in, well, London specifically, since we're talking about London Pride March, but in the UK in general.
Yes.
There was a leaflet from Gay Pride Week in 1978 that mentioned increasing homophobic attacks over the past year, including an attack on the Royal Vauxhall Tavern by the National Front. Coordinated attacks. It was still a really hostile place to be. It was really hard to be openly out at work without it having big ramifications.
Yeah.
There just weren't as many overtly gay people out in society.
The public eye.
Yeah,
right.
So that's the context for these first marches. So the very first march took place on November 27th, 1970. It was organised by the Gay Liberation Front.
Cool.
And about 150 men walked through Highbury Fields in North London.
All men?
It seemed to be. I don't know for sure, but from everything I said, it specifically said men marched through Highbury Fields. Yeah. It was a torchlit demonstration, and there was a quote from Professor Geoffrey Weeks, who was there, and he said, "I went along. It was a Friday night, and we were given candles, and we marched around the field several times." Yeah, I mean, I haven't found a huge amount of reporting on that initial one, but that's the first kind of recorded event of people explicitly going out into public as a group, marching, saying, "Hey, we're gay."
Yeah.
In August 1971, the Gay Liberation Front organised another march along Islington's High Street back to Highbury Fields. So that was another one the next year.
Yep.
But then the very first official UK Gay Pride rally was on the 1st of July 1972, also organised by the GLF.
So that was the first one in the UK as well?
Yeah, so the very first official UK Pride event
was in London.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that date in July was chosen as the closest anniversary to the Stonewall riots, which had taken place 3 years earlier.
Right, okay,
yeah.
Cool.
There were approximately 2,000 participants, and they marched from Trafalgar Square to Hyde Park. And the aim was pretty much to do what it says on the tin, show that they weren't ashamed of their sexuality, they were proud of who they were.
Yep.
There wasn't enough queer representation at the time, so that was a really big thing. There was an account from someone who was there, and he said the slogan that they used for the day was "Gay is good." Great. Yeah. Clear. Yeah. Lovely. Simple, straightforward. But annoyingly revolutionary. Yeah. Yeah. So this first-hand account was by Peter Tatchell, who was a member of the GLF, and he talks about friends of his being too afraid to join the march because they were worried they would lose their jobs if they were seen. Yeah. They were also really worried about their physical safety, both from homophobic members of the public, but also from the police. Yeah. And there was like this really heavy police presence, but apparently there were no arrests. Okay. He said there was a real carnival atmosphere. People wore costumes and held up banners, poking fun at homophobes. So it looks like that tradition started really early in these pride marches, which is cool. Yeah. There's a quote from him that says, "We got mixed reactions from the public. Some were hostile. Many were curious or bewildered. Most had never knowingly seen a gay person, let alone hundreds of queers marching to demand freedom. They just gawped." Which is, it's really cool to think of the reactions of the people around them. I hadn't really thought about that in terms of the first pride marches. But people were just really shocked. They just hadn't seen that before and didn't really know how to react. Yeah. So the 1973 London Gay Pride was organised by the Campaign for Homosexual Equality. So CHE is one of the oldest gay rights organisations in the UK. Okay. And in the 70s it was basically CHE and GLF were the two main gay rights organisations in the UK. Cool. Subsequent annual London events were organised by an ad hoc committee. Yeah. And throughout the late 70s and 80s, attendance rarely exceeded 1,000 people. Really? Okay. So it's pretty low to start with. Yeah. So, like, pretty small-ish compared to what we think of today. In 1983, the procession is renamed the Lesbian and Gay Pride. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I think, like you asked before, I think it was mostly men at the kind of very first one, and it was very much driven by gay men to begin with. And I guess, like, with the context that you brought up at the start, a lot of the focus was on gay men, wasn't it? Because before 1967, it was a criminal act. Yes, but it wasn't a criminal act for two women to have sex. Yeah. So, it is a different, like, that context does change things. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, small history side note, Eleanor. I love a history side note. Yes. So, in 1984 to 1985, there was this year-long miners' strike in the UK. Which is, Thatcher. Yes, absolutely something we'll get into down the road. But it had this huge and often devastating impact on the miners and their families, and unions and other organisations coordinated relief efforts to help families who were struggling. But during the mining strike, Thatcher the Thatcher administration, let's not put it on Thatcher herself, sequestered the funds of the National Union of Mine Workers. So giving money to the union wouldn't actually help them support miners. Oh, yeah. Right. I didn't know that. So sneaky. So instead, support groups were encouraged to sponsor a mining community directly. Okay, cool. Yeah, and one of the organisations that did that was the LGSM, aka the Lesbian and Gay Support the Miners. I've seen a movie about it. I was about to say, it's so you've probably seen Pride, the movie. It's beautiful. 2014. Yeah. Yeah, so this tells the story of LGSM. So it started in the 1984 London Pride March when Mark Ashton and Mike Jackson collected money for striking miners during the parade because a miner had gotten up on stage to speak and he'd gotten all this support, so they just grabbed a bucket and went around and kind of collected some money. And they decided to turn it into an organisation. Sweet. Just as a side note on my side note. Members of the LGBTQ community were doing so much work throughout Britain already within labour and trade unions to support the miners, but this was an organisation that specifically, explicitly, as gay people, were supporting miners. Great. Yeah. So I don't want to go too deep into it because it's its own amazing story and you should totally watch the movie and cry. But they were much cry. Yeah. so much. But yeah, LGSM were really successful. By the end of the strike, they had 11 branches throughout the UK, and the London group alone raised £11,000. Whoa! Equivalent which to in today's money, £33,000 in today's money. Yeah. Wow. To support the strike. That's brilliant. And there were lots of reciprocal visits between LGSM and the miners they supported. The London group was supporting a group of miners in Wales. And there's this really great quote from one of the miners in the community they were supporting, who stood up. This was after the strike had ended, they'd gone back to work. Okay. He said, "Now our fight is over. It's time to turn around and support those who have supported us, for their struggle continues, and none less than the lesbians and gays who have stood by us solidly." Oh. Yeah, because there were lots of different, marginalised communities that came out to support the miners. the miners kind of turned around and were like, it's our time to support them back.
So great.
Yeah.
It's so lovely.
So they did. They came to the 1985 Pride March, and they marched right up the front, right behind the Pride banner, with 1,000 people in the section. It makes me tear up. I know. Talking about people coming together to tell Margaret Thatcher to get fucked. Yeah. Just like, it really, gets the emotions running.
Claire is really actually beautiful. Crying right now.
It's never happened before, guys.
This will be the first of many cries.
It's so great.
Yeah.
And there was 1,000 people in their section. They were holding up their union banner. And that year's Pride March saw this massive increase in attendance. Generally, like 15,000 people marching. Thanks to all these miners' unions coming out to support them. It's so good.
It's the fucking best.
Yeah. It was really cool. It's a great little way that kind of Pride reflected things that were happening within the community and in wider society.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to Pride generally.
Yes.
In 1986, the march moves to Jubilee Gardens on the south bank of the Thames, and 10,000 people take part. So it's just becoming bigger and bigger every year, basically.
Sweet.
By 1988, there are 40,000 people because lots of people came out in protest of the Section 28 laws.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
So Section 28 of the Local Government Act of 1988 stated that a local authority shall not intentionally promote homosexuality or publish material with the intention of promoting homosexuality, or promote the teaching in any maintained school of the acceptability of homosexuality as a pretend family relationship. It was gross. It was a really shitty thing. It was really awful. It was basically saying you couldn't talk about being gay
at all.
Yeah, you just couldn't talk about it because talking about it, which
legitimized it.
Exactly, and it made it seem like it was an okay thing.
Yeah.
And organisations wanted to talk about it in the context of giving kids access to,
services.
Yeah, and like relationship support and sexual health services. And if you did that, that meant you were quote unquote promoting this thing.
I read a little bit about this too, and I got the impression that it was in schools as well. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was really explicitly, it says promote the teaching in any maintained school.
Yeah, yeah.
So schools were just not allowed to talk about being gay.
Sex education in schools
could not
include a discussion.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they couldn't even talk about it in a romantic context. Like, even if you weren't giving a sex education lesson, you just couldn't talk about being gay almost at all. Like, it just put this stranglehold on it.
How do you ever study literature, ever?
Yeah, I know. And that wasn't repealed until 2003.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So a lot of people came out to Pride as a way of protesting that, to be like, well, fuck you, we're here.
Yep.
Yeah. And then in 1996, following a vote by members of the Pride Trust, the event is renamed Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual and Transgender Pride, and it becomes the largest free music festival in Europe.
Sweet. Just as a bonus.
Yeah. So, since the 90s, there'd been kind of more of a carnival atmosphere to the event with, live music and a fair after the march. Yeah.
Great.
Then in 2004, the charity Pride London is formed, and they run all the London Pride events until 2012, renaming it Pride in London, which is what I should be calling it, but I'm probably just going to keep saying Pride London. It rolls off the tongue a bit easier. And so since then, they've also organised a political protest in Trafalgar Square after every march.
Cool, okay.
Yeah.
And does that change every year depending on current issues?
So, yeah, I think it's just a chance for people to go and protest against, be political and protest against whatever bullshit the government is trying to throw at them at the moment. Lots of the London Pride marches have since become part of bigger Pride community events. So in 2006, it was Euro Pride.
Cool.
And in 2012, the event was actually World Pride.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Other relevant events often take place at the same time. So the first International Asexual Conference was held at the 2012 World Pride in London.
Cool.
Yeah. So there's just lots of things that get to kind of happen in conjunction with Pride, so people get a chance to kind of be involved in multiple aspects of their community.
Sweet.
Yeah. So there's been a bit of controversy around kind of recent Pride marches with corporate sponsorship.
Okay.
So, a lot of people see this as corporations taking over what should be a protest. And the track record of LGBTQ rights by many of the companies taking part aren't great.
Sketchy.
So it's seen as rainbow washing. We can kind of just pretend we're not idiots and we're not awful people if we sponsor Pride. Yeah. So Hannah D, a queer socialist, argues that it has reached the point that London Pride, once a militant demonstration in commemoration of the Stonewall riots, has become a corporate-sponsored event far removed from any challenge to the ongoing injustices that we, the LGBT community, face. So there's been a lot of criticism around that and a lot of discussion around the best way to support the community and give them the chance to have the best Pride March possible.
Yes.
But also someone has to pay for it.
Yeah.
It has to be funded somehow.
Yeah.
So last year's Pride March was marred by trans exclusionary idiots who came to the front and said a bunch of really awful things and carried really awful banners.
Okay.
And the organisers were criticised for not really taking steps to remove them faster.
Okay.
Yeah, and not being more decisive and active in dealing with that and shutting it down quicker.
Yeah.
Which is awful considering, you know, there would have been a lot of trans participants who would have felt that
excluded.
Which I mean is the, you know, purpose of the intention of those awful people, and it's just awful to think they might have succeeded.
Yeah.
But Pride 2019 is set for Saturday, 6th of July.
Awesome.
But there are dozens of Pride marches around the UK every year. The London one is the biggest, but pretty much every major city, even a lot of towns, have their own Pride marches.
Awesome.
So it's still a really great chance for celebration, but also community solidarity and defiance. Like, a lot of people still really see it as this chance for protest and to say, hey, we're here, don't forget about us, and don't try and, you know, do anything against our community.
Yeah.
And I wanted to finish with a really great quote from a participant of the 2015 London Pride March. So a guy called Dan was there with friends of his, and he was interviewed by Pink News, which is a great website.
Yeah.
And he said, I feel liberated. I feel free. It's great, especially in light of current events in other countries, to wear this flag.
Oh, Dan.
I know. I just thought it was a really sweet summation of, like, why Pride is still really important to people. Because, I mean, I think it's easy to forget that it's not always as easy to come out in this society still, and that it is still incredibly heteronormative. And we still have, you know, things like legislation on the books that doesn't support trans people and gay people and...
Or reflect life. Just reflect the reality of life in any way. Yeah.
And that, you know, for people, this is still a chance to come together in a place that's totally safe and totally supportive, and a chance to protest the things that aren't good, but really celebrate the things that are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it has this incredibly rich history.
Yeah, that was so interesting.
Yeah.
Claire. Thank you so much.
No, it was, really fun to research. But yeah, what are you going to tell us about? I'd love to hear it.
Well, I just thought, so I had a peek at your notes, Claire, and I knew you were going to do London Pride.
Gotta stop keeping it in our shared Google Drive folder.
Behind the scenes at School Britannia. So I thought I would balance up London Pride with a little bit of history from up north. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the incredible contributions that LGBTQI people have made to Scotland and the world at large.
Awesome.
So just some highlights. There's been so many, but just a few like greatest hits. This is all of this is from a brilliant poster made by lgbthistory.org.uk. It's the best. We will absolutely share it with you. And a huge shout out to my friend Derek Gilchrist, who pointed me in its direction.
Thank you, Derek.
He's an amazing activist himself and also a bloody fantastic arts marketer. So if you ever need some art that needs marketing, he's your guy.
On you, Derek.
On you, Derek.
So talented.
Thanks, Derek. So I'm going to start in 1957 with the Wolfenden Report, which is something that I thought you were going to talk about, but you talked about another thing. So I'm glad that I can contribute this. So the Criminal Law Amendment Act in 1885 deemed any homosexual activity between men illegal. So you couldn't have sex. Basically, that was just not okay in the eyes of the law. And after World War II, there was an increase in arrests and prosecutions. So there must have just been like an increase in homophobia then, and police were really targeting people.
Yeah, that definitely came up with things I was reading when I was trying to kind of find out a bit more of the context, because I hadn't really thought much about it, but it was the McCarthy era in America, and there was a huge homophobic slant to the McCarthy, you know,
it's like the
witch hunt,
family values stuff.
Yeah, that nuclear
and
family,
nasty
family being a priority. Yeah, and Britain wasn't immune to that at all.
Like a real desire to enforce gender normity and all that crap. So by the end of 1954, there were 1,069 men in prison for homosexual acts in England and Wales. So I'm not sure about Scotland. It didn't mention Scotland. I'm not sure. Following the trial of Alan Turing and other really highly publicised trials, a department committee was set up to consider whether maybe we should change this shitty law. It was headed by Sir John Wolfenden, so the Wolfenden Report. They did heaps of research and heaps of interviews with people from all walks of life. It was a bit tricky to get interviews with gay men because it was a criminal act, and if you admitted to it, then you were at risk of imprisonment. So it was really difficult to get that side of the story. But they did. There were some really brave men who stepped up and helped. The report recommended decriminalising homosexuality, but it didn't get turned into law until 1967, which is the date you mentioned. So
I'm impressed that they actually spoke to gay men.
Yes.
I feel like in that context, in that time, I wouldn't have been surprised if they just decided that as a bunch of straight men, they were allowed to make these choices themselves.
And it was
consultation.
It was quite a conservative committee as well. It was sort of people from the aristocracy and people from the Conservative Party. And there were 3 women on it, and one of them was from the Scottish Girl Guides, which is kind of cool.
But also it's like, maybe put a gay man on your committee.
I mean,
but like you said, it was a criminal,
But it later became known that Wolfenden's son, Jeremy, was gay.
Oh, wow.
So he maybe had that point of view in his home and hopefully was reflecting that. So,
which is like, it's lovely that, he could see his son and accept him, but
and want to help him.
Frustrating that maybe had to wait until it was such a personal issue for someone for it to be dealt with. But,
for someone in power. Yeah, totally. So, in 1967, they passed the Sexual Offences Act, which decriminalised homosexuality. So, the thing about that, though, was that the Sexual Offences Act only applied to England and Wales. So, homosexuality wasn't decriminalised in Scotland until 1980.
Whoa!
Yeah, with the Criminal Justice Act. In Northern Ireland, it didn't become decriminalised until 1982. So that's a big gap. That's like, I'm bad at maths. It's like 13 years? 13 years.
Why? I mean, I kind of understand with Northern Ireland and having to comply.
I'm not sure because Scottish Parliament didn't start up again until 1999.
Exactly. So England had all the control.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I didn't find that one out. But to put that in context, though, because 1980 sounds real late, and of course it is, but in Australia, our home country, it wasn't decriminalised till 1994.
Ugh.
And in my home state of Tasmania, it wasn't decriminalised until 1997.
Oh my God, I was 7 years old.
I was 8.
And it was still illegal on the books as a law.
Yeah.
It's awful.
And I think someone had to, my dad loves telling this story, that someone had to actually challenge the law, and to do that you had to be convicted. So
kind of like with Rosa Parks and the bus.
Exactly. So this really brave couple from Hobart came into the police station and got out all these pictures of them having sex, and they were just
oh my God,
arrest us. Here's the evidence, arrest us. And the police were like, we don't want to. And they were like, no, it's the law. You have to arrest us. And they did, so that they could actually bring a suit against.
At that point, the laws were there, but no one was being prosecuted for them. So was it kind of the same thing in Scotland and Northern Ireland? Like, those laws existed for longer, but no one was being prosecuted under them?
I'm not sure. I just know that it was decriminalised in 1980.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to talk you through some little milestones. Ooh. And some of them are just, like, super fun. So in 1982, Scotland got its first LGBTQI bookshop.
Oh, cool.
It was called Lavender Menace. And
it's a great name.
I know, it's so good. Lavender Menace. And it opened on 4th Street in Edinburgh, which is just near my yoga studio.
Oh, so it's
pretty cool. In 1989, LGBT Youth Scotland was established in Edinburgh with a mission to empower young LGBTQI young people in Scotland. And it's still going, so you can check them out at lgbtyouth.org.uk. They're super cool. In 1990, Edwin Morgan, who was Glasgow's Poet Laureate and Scotland's first Macca, which is the chief poet of Scotland.
Thank you. I was like, what?
I love that Scotland has a chief poet.
That's so great.
The one at the moment is Jackie Kay, and she's so fucking cool. So he came out at the age of 70, which was pretty special that someone of such prominence was super, super brave and came out and said he was gay. It's awesome. In 1995, Scotland's first Pride March took place. They walked from Barony Street in Edinburgh on the 17th of June. And Pride in Edinburgh is happening this year on the 22nd of June. So keep an eye out for that. And you can hop onto the prideedinburgh.org.uk website if you want more details.
Nice.
Very cool.
I marched in Edinburgh Pride last year. It's a really great event. Yeah, it's really big. Beautiful. It's really fun.
What was your route?
They started at Holyrood and they went up the Royal Mile and then they went across George IV Bridge and they ended at the university, and then there's this kind of like, there's live music and there's stalls and
awesome.
It's a really cool event.
That sounds great. I'll see you there this year.
Yeah.
In the year 2000, the Scottish government beat the UK government and repealed Section 28 of the Local Government Act that Claire mentioned before, which this section forbade the promotion of homosexuality by local authorities. It's super fucking shitty. So,
and it's one of the first things the Scottish government did.
Yes. So
they were just like, let's get this off the books. This is awful.
So the Scottish government was formed in 1999, and this was one of the first pieces of legislation that they enacted.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Pretty cool. A great thing to have on your books straight up. In 2001, like you said, the age of consent for gay and bisexual men was lowered to 16, like everybody else, because they had been 21. Fucking insane. In the year 2003, Margaret Smith and Patrick Harvey became Scotland's first out LGBTQI MSPs. So that's members of Scottish Parliament.
Oh, awesome. That's
Very
so cute.
In 2004, the Gender Recognition Act was passed in Scotland, which provided greater legal recognition for transgender men and women. And were you going to talk a little bit about how that is being modified and needs some changes? Yeah,
they're trying to update it to make it more reflective of trans people's experiences and more inclusive and just less of an awful process to go through so that you can have your gender identity recognized. You can check it out. Stonewall have a really good website. Stonewall's a UK charity as well, and they have a great website that details where they're at with that at the moment.
Awesome. Yeah, because a lot of it's to do with medical tests of your trans
and there's just a huge burden on proof on on people applying, and it's just, it can be quite difficult.
Stressful and traumatic.
But it's an ongoing process at the moment as to the government wanting to update that, and it's something that Nicola Sturgeon was making a priority in her term, was to update that.
Amazing. Cool. In 2005, the first same-sex civil partnership took place in Scotland on the 20th of December.
Yay, weddings!
And that same year, the first LGBT History Month took place in Scotland and the UK.
Cool. So, I didn't know it was so recent. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't think to look up the history of the month that we're talking about.
You were focusing on Pride. It's fair.
Pride marches.
In 2007, equal rights were granted to same-sex couples applying for adoption.
Oh,
so super important, that one. In 2009, Carol Ann Duffy became the first woman, first Scot, and first openly LGBT person to be the UK's Poet Laureate.
Yes! Go, Carol Ann! That's awesome!
Triple threat, Carol. I love that one. In 2014, the first same-sex weddings take place at just a minute past midnight on Hogmanay, which is Scotland's New Year's Eve. I looked them up and they are predictably adorable. So Joe Schofield and Malcolm Brown got married at Trades Hall in Glasgow. They were accompanied by Liz Lochhead, who was the Macca at the time, so Scotland's chief poet at the time.
Oh, imagine having the chief poet at your wedding.
And then get this. So Susan and Gary Douglas Scott had their marriage witnessed by Nicola Sturgeon and and the Green Party co-convener Patrick Harvey.
So cool.
There's a really cute photo. We're going to put it on our Instagram. It's lovely. And then in 2016, the brilliant, inspiring, amazing playwright Jo Clifford was the first trans woman to perform The Reply from the Lassies at Burns Night in Glasgow. So at a Burns Night, I should have talked about this more in my Burns episode, but there's all these like really strict structures about you sort of bring the haggis out and you do the address to the haggis, and then there's, I think it's like address to the lassies and then a reply from the lassies, and there's all these like set speeches that people make.
Cool.
And they do change every year, but it's to do with current events, and they'll bring up something. Yeah. So,
great.
So Jo did a reply from the lassies.
Oh, that's so cool.
I thought I'd end on a poem, Claire.
Oh, please do.
This is all about love and being who you are, and this is a gorgeous poem from Carol Ann Duffy, who we mentioned before. Triple threat, Carol Ann Duffy. So this is called Valentine by Carol Ann Duffy. Not a red rose or a satin heart, I give you an onion. It is a moon wrapped in brown paper. It promises light, like the careful undressing of love. Here, it will blind you with tears like a lover. It will make your reflection a wobbling photo of grief. I am trying to be truthful. Not a cute card or a kissogram. I give you an onion. Its fierce kiss will stay on your lips, possessive and faithful, as we are, for as long as we are. Take it. Its platinum loops shrink to a wedding ring, if you like. Lethal. Its scent will cling to your fingers, cling to your knife. That's Valentine.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
My pleasure. If you want to hear more history tidbits, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Please rate, review, and subscribe so other history buffs can find us too.
If you want to know what sources we use, please go to our SoundCloud page. The link is in the description.
Today's homework for our hetero listeners is to queer up your life. Find some cool queer Instagram accounts to follow, listen to some queer music, support queer-owned businesses, and look out for your LGBTQI mates, because the world can still be shit. And to our queer friends, keep being awesome.